Okay, what I'm going to show you today is how to properly lift and support a vehicle using a floor jack and jack stands. And I want to make one note, and it's very important. People have lost their life doing this. People have died having cars fall on them. Cars, trucks, anything like that. If you do not know how to do this or do not feel comfortable doing this, don't even try it. Find someone who knows what they are doing to help you or do the job for you. But again, people have died doing this incorrectly. Okay, what I want to talk about today are floor jacks. So floor jacks are found in garages all around the world. It is probably the main way people work on cars at their house. It is the safest way to lift a vehicle. Of course, don't forget, you never want to get under a vehicle that is only supported by a floor jack. You always want to use jack stands. So let's quickly talk about the parts and the pieces, and then how to actually use one and lift up a vehicle. So at the very front, there are going to be wheels. This is so you are able to move the floor jack around your garage and then get it properly underneath the vehicle. You have the saddle. This is the part of the floor jack that actually contacts the vehicle. There's typically a pad. This one is a rubber pad so that you do not damage the vehicle. These usually can rotate around so you can get them at the best spot to make contact. There is the lifting arm right here. So this is what actually lifts up. If we move towards the back, there is usually going to be some kind of a grease fitting for a grease gun that you can fill. And this is just regular maintenance that needs to be done on the floor jack. Moving back, you have the actual handle. So this is typically you twist it counterclockwise or clockwise to perform various functions. This one actually has a pin that I can pull back and remove the handle for more convenient storage. If we look again on the back, I have another grease fitting that I would need to do regular maintenance on. There is another one over here. There is some grease right here. Now these are the actual pistons that operate the hydraulic portion of the floor jack. These need to be greased as well. If we take a look, and one of the main, importance is we're looking at the rating of the floor jack. There we go. So this is a 2-ton floor jack. So if we remember, 1 ton is equivalent to 2,000 pounds. So this can lift 4,000 pounds. You want to make sure that you are getting the proper floor jack to be able to lift what you're going to be working on. So if a 2-ton floor jack is pretty common, that's a good starting point. You're going to be able to lift most passenger vehicles, your Honda Accords, Honda Civics, most light trucks you can lift. When we start getting into the more heavy duty trucks, you're going to need to upgrade your equipment. Okay? So let's go over how to actually use the floor jack. Okay, so actually using a floor jack properly, as you can see, I can wheel it around. I'm going to position it underneath the vehicle to get the best contact. Now the handle, so where the handle enters into the tool, I can twist this counterclockwise or clockwise. We're going to think about this like a bolt, right? So righty-tighty. So as I twist it clockwise, it is then going to tighten down. Once it becomes secure and all the way tight, now it's going to allow the hydraulic fluid to lift the vehicle. So as I pump the handle, you can see the saddle and the arm lifts up, and it's going to actually contact the vehicle and begin to lift. And then if I twist counterclockwise, it's going to lower the saddle and the arm back down. Now, there we go. Once I have lifted a vehicle off the ground, when I twist this handle counterclockwise, the more I spin the handle, the more rotations I go, the faster it's going to let the vehicle down. Now I don't have any weight on this obviously, but as you can see, I'm going to crack it just a little bit loose, and you can see the saddle is going to go down very slowly. There it goes. Very slow, very controlled. Now if I were to just completely twist this, obviously, if the weight of a vehicle was on there, it would go a lot quicker, a lot faster. But just something to note again, the more I twist this counterclockwise, the faster it's going to let the car down. Okay, so I like to go pretty slow and controlled, letting the vehicle down either onto jack stands or onto the ground. So that's the basics of how to use a floor jack. All right, now we're going to talk about how to get the vehicle off the ground safely and supported safely. So don't forget, we're going to use a floor jack to lift the vehicle, jack stands to support the vehicle. Now I have our Honda Civic up on the lift right now, and as you can see, this is probably the easiest way. We can get it completely off the ground. We can stand underneath it. It's a lot more convenient, but not everyone has access to this. So using a floor jack at home is going to be your next step. Underneath the vehicle, there are some important things that we need to look for and ways to lift the vehicle without doing any damage or getting hurt. So a couple spots we want to avoid. We're going to start in the front. I never want to lift the vehicle by the oil pan or any part of the engine. In fact, I'm going to edit that out. So I never want to lift the vehicle by the oil pan or any part of the transmission, oil pan, definitely not the exhaust. As you can see, the exhaust right here runs the length of the vehicle. I want to avoid these areas right here. A good spot that I could go is if I pan over right here. This is part of the suspension. So this is part of the vehicle's frame. This is a very strong point. I can actually put my floor jack here, lift the vehicle up. My main goal is to get the vehicle off the ground, and then if we look right here where I'm putting my pads, it is this support piece right here, and I hope you guys can see it with the light. It's that support piece right there that I'm going to put my jack stands, but I have to get the vehicle off the ground first. So I could use this suspension point right here. I'm looking for anything that's made of metal that is sturdy and can support the weight. I want to avoid anything that has a bend like this. As you guys can see, this kind of has this down slope. I can lift the vehicle here, but the problem is the car can slip off of the floor jack. So I want to avoid any of these control arms like this. This would be a really good spot to start. If I pan over to the other side of the vehicle, you can see I have the matching one on, this is the driver's side. So I want to avoid this control arm here, and I would rather go here. Avoid the axle. Again, I want to avoid anything that is on the engine. Definitely the exhaust, stay away from that. So on our Honda here, we actually have, and I'm going to pan you over, we actually have this point right here. There is a front cross member that runs the width of the vehicle. This helps support the radiator. This is a good spot to go for. Best place to look is your owner's manual. That's going to list the different spots that you can lift the vehicle by. But this one is definitely a good spot to go. So as we're moving down through the vehicle, again, here's my exhaust that runs the length. I want to avoid, as you can see, the exhaust actually moves and flexes a little bit. So that would be not a good spot to grab. I could grab here. This is underneath the vehicle. What I like to do is just kind of go around, and you can hear the difference, right? So if I hit something that is solid metal, sounds solid. When I go over to this spot here, you can hear the change in the pitch. If it sounds hollow, avoid that spot at all costs. You don't want to do any damage to the vehicle while trying to lift it up. Okay, so as we pan now over to the back, spin you guys around. There we go. On the back of the vehicle, again, I have this suspension component where this control arm ties into the vehicle here. This would be a great spot to grab. I can also go on the matching one over here on the driver's side, so I can lift the vehicle here. I would avoid this spot right here. This is kind of a softer portion of the vehicle. I would rather go over to this point. There we go. And then on Hondas and other import vehicles, they have what's called a tow hook. So this is actually a spot of the vehicle that is designed to have a hook where you can drag it out of the, if it goes into a ditch or something like that. This is another strong point that I like to use. And the beauty of this is it is centrally located, so I'm going to back it up. You guys can see that it is actually right about there. If I were to lift the vehicle by that, it would lift the whole back of the car, not just one side at a time. So that's a really good spot for the rear of the vehicle. Again, areas to avoid back here. I want to avoid anything that has to do with the exhaust. This is a soft portion of the vehicle where the spare tire actually rests, so I want to avoid that area. And then here is a big one. This is actually the fuel tank. These are usually made of plastic or really, really thin metal. I want to avoid that portion. So again, I'm looking for a strong suspension component. There's one there, there's one there, and I want to get the vehicle off the ground to be able to support it safely with jack stands. So let's do that now. All right, so wrapping up where I want to avoid lifting a vehicle, I want to avoid any kind of a line that's running the length. So this is the front of the vehicle running to the back. You can see this little, this is a little protective plastic covering. Inside of here are some lines. These are fuel and brake lines. I definitely want to avoid lifting a vehicle by the fuel and brake lines. If I pinch these, at least it's going to cause the engine not to run if I pinch a fuel line. If I pinch a brake line, it's going to cause my brakes to fail. So definitely want to avoid any kind of line. So just to wrap up, I'm looking for any kind of a solid suspension component that I can lift the vehicle by. So on the front of our Honda Civic, you can see there are these two integrated pieces right here that I can lift the vehicle. This is a really good spot. I can also use up here, again, this is part of the frame of the vehicle. And then walking towards the back, I'm looking again, suspension components. I have another solid, good part right here, both sides. And in the very rear of the vehicle, I have this tow hook. Really good spot to lift the vehicle by. All right, so I'm actually getting ready to lift up the vehicle, and I'm gonna start in the front. Now, one important thing that I wanna note, if I'm starting in the front or the rear, wherever you're starting, the opposite side or the opposite portion of the vehicle, you wanna make sure that it's not gonna wanna roll forward or backward. So again, I'm gonna start with the front. So what I have done is, number one, I have pulled the emergency brake on the vehicle. That's to lock the rear wheels. I have also done what's called chocking the wheels. So as you can see, I have placed a piece of wood. This is, again, as the front of the vehicle goes up and the weight is shifted towards the rear, I do not want that vehicle to start rolling. Okay, so I am at the front of the vehicle. I'm gonna actually slide my floor jack underneath the vehicle to the point where I wanna lift it. So now I am making sure to twist my handle clockwise. I'm gonna place the saddle right where I want it, and I'm gonna begin to lift just until it contacts the vehicle. There it does. And then I'm going to make sure that I am securely where I want the floor jack. Now I can continue to lift, and as you can see, I'll back you up just a little bit. I'm beginning to lift the front of the vehicle. Now, depending on where you're lifting, it's either going to lift one side or the whole front/rear of the car. So again, I have chalked the rear wheel. I have the emergency brake set, and I'm lifting up to a comfortable height. So as you can see now, my passenger side vehicle is off the ground. My driver's side vehicle, or driver's side tire, is still on the ground. So this is about a comfortable height. I'll give it one more lift. So now we're gonna place the jack stand. I wanted to give you a better look, just to give you kind of an idea where we're at. So right behind the front wheel and also right in front of the rear wheel are gonna be these areas on the vehicle. You can see right here that these are designated lift points on the vehicle. They are a strong part of the vehicle that is designed to hold the weight of it. So on unibody cars, that is going to be your best spot. So that's a better look at those. Okay, I'm getting ready to place my jack stand at the proper point. One thing I want to note on a jack stand is also its lifting capabilities. So this one is rated at 2 tons. I have verified that my Honda Civic does not weigh that much. Once again, 1 ton is 2,000 pounds, so this can handle 4,000 pounds. That is plenty. So I'm going to simply place my jack stand and also pin you up a little bit. On a jack stand, they'll have this little saddle area right here, this little groove. You want to put the part of the car that you want to sit inside of this groove. You don't want to go, on either end. You want it right dead center in the middle. So I'm going to simply place the jack stand, and then I'm going to slowly let the vehicle down. Now I want to make sure that I am putting this jack stand on a nice level part of the ground. I'm not doing this on gravel or dirt or sand or anything that's going to slip. Nothing uneven. So now let me lower the vehicle down slowly. And so now we have my passenger front of the vehicle off the ground, and my floor jack has been removed. Let's repeat this on the other side. Okay, so now you can see I have the front of the vehicle off the ground. I have both tires completely off of the ground. So if I was going to be working on the front of the vehicle, I can now perform work. So if I'm going to do an oil change or I'm going to be inspecting the front brakes, I can do that. The next thing I want to do though, before I get underneath the vehicle, and this is super important, I want to make sure that the vehicle is safe. Right? I do have it on my floor or on my jack stands, so I know that my vehicle is supported, but I want to make sure that it's not going to fall. So what I want to do is just to give the vehicle a little bit of a shake. I want to make sure, again, if this car is going to fall, I don't want to be underneath it. So I want to give it just a little bit of a shake. It feels pretty secure, so I'm going to go to both sides, just make sure I would feel confident getting underneath this vehicle. So now let's talk about getting the rear of the car off the ground. Okay, I am at the rear of the vehicle. I am going to use a central tow hook that is right here in the center of my vehicle. Really good spot. Again, it's going to be able to lift the rear of the vehicle all at one time, so I don't have to do it individually. If the vehicle you're working on does not have a centrally located lift point, you're going to have to lift each side one at a time. So let's go ahead and lift up the rear. So there we go. So now I'm going to place the jack stands. All right, as you can see, I now have all four wheels off of the ground. I have once again given the rear of the vehicle a shake to make sure that it is safely supported. I would now feel confident getting underneath this car, performing any kind of work, taking the wheels off, doing any kind of brake work, things like that, rotating the tires. Okay, last little bit of information I want to talk to you about when lifting and securing a vehicle is our Honda Civic I just showed you is what's called a unibody vehicle. So that means the whole body of the car is its frame. Older cars, trucks, and then more specifically our van that we have here is what's called a full frame vehicle. So as you can see right here, and it runs the length of the vehicle, this is the frame of the vehicle, the support system. So actually the body is dropped and mounted to this very strong frame. So when you're lifting and supporting a full framed vehicle, you still want to lift it by the components I showed you earlier, except now you're going to place your jack stands on the frame itself. And so again, you want to go as far apart as you can, closest to the front, and then further back you can to get a nice equal support for the vehicle.